Autopots, DWC, which of the two are the better method? And I guess it depends on how I'm coming in to answer this question, because I feel like I can easily change the criteria on what I deem to make something better and kind of lean it one way or the other. But for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to do that because my mind is already made up as soon as I hear the question. When I was asked this question, immediately in my mind, I went Autopot without a doubt, and I decided, let me go ahead and do this video and give a reason as to why I think that. Understand this, when I answer this question, it is an opinion, just happens to be a fact. To start off, I'll go ahead and talk about what each of the two is. I'll have timestamps in the video so you can just jump ahead for the people that already know this. But if I don't include it, I will get yelled at, and I'm sorry for making crappy videos. I try. First up, we have DWC, or deep water culture. And it's a form of a hydroponic form of growing where it involves your plants being submerged into water, which has nutrients in it. And then you have a bubbler in there for aeration. In simple terms, pretty much, that's how it's going. Usually done in some sort of bucket with a lid system. Plant sits in that system right there, hangs roots into the nutrients down there at the base, where you have your hose coming through and an air stone at the end of the hose to provide bubbles and aeration throughout the root zone. Autopots are going to be more like a hybrid. They actually have the capability of being ran hydroponically. It wouldn't be more like deep water culture. It'd be more like shallow water culture, but it's still culture. You know what I'm saying? You can't pick and choose. There's a pot, media of your choice, sitting inside of like a little container, a reservoir of its own, as you will, a base, and you can run multiple plants like that in those bases. Those bases are all connected through tubing, and that tubing is ran to a bigger reservoir, which, you know, there is all the rest of your nutrients, and then from there, gravity forces all the nutrients to flow down the tubing into each of those mini little reservoirs at the bases of the pots, and then therefore is wicked up through the bottom of the plant. And then the water level is changed and controlled through an aqua valve, which once the water lowers, it fills back up. And then you can add a tubing and an air dome at the base of the pots, which then now turns it into more of hydroponics and like a little shallow water culture. DWC and Autopots both have the capability of running multiple plant counts. You can add as much as you want to the system. DWC, you could, you know, just add a bunch of buckets, or to connect it all to one system, we'll count our DWC in the same bracket, because all in all, it's the same thing. It's just now each bucket is connected to themselves, and then now there's a reservoir, which then now circulates all that water. The configuration is limited, though, in that, because you're running, you know, PVC pipes. You can run like the flexi pipes and stuff, but the pipes that you're running are like 1.5 to 2 inches, I believe. Those are too big of pipes to just be moving all around and configuring to more loose-like positions, whereas the Autopots, it's 3/8 tubing. You can configure that thing into any format you want, just all sorts of different things, stretching out all across. As long as it's all level, the water will navigate its way to the base of those pots. When it comes to growth, DWC is unmatched. That's why most people get into DWC. That was at least a selling point for me. I seen how fast they grew, and then on top of that, you get to look at the roots. Like, it's always beautiful to look at the roots, even in like a media where you're transplanting, you get to see those roots. It's just amazing to see how the root zone navigates, and then DWC is just nothing but roots, and you have easy access to view them in like a raw form. The growth on them is unmatched, and I'll just quickly give that to DWC. What I will say about Autopots is all the plants that I've grown in them, they all have that same growth like all the DWC plants I've grown. They all have that same look as far as like how thick that stem gets. Like in DWC, my stem gets really thick. In Autopots, it's the same thing. They reminded me of all those massive plants I produced in DWC. So I will say Autopots is like one of the next closest things to being DWC, but I still won't say it's DWC. But they do have the form of making it hydroponics with the bubbler, so you could even say it's there. I haven't tried it yet. I'll have to grow it, do it side by side, so I know for sure. So right now, I'll lean DWC. Now, to go over cost, I'm going to lean DWC as well, because initially you could start off and go on Amazon or somewhere, and you can find like 4-pot systems with a cheaper pump, not really powerful of a pump, and you can find those for right around $100, maybe to $150 range right there. Then you can also find some even better systems for a little bit more, you know, so right around $200, you can find some decent stuff. You can have different configurations that even go a little bit to be more expensive. Maybe you're doing the RDWC route, that'll cost a little bit more because it's more pieces. And then you can also go the DIY route and just save overall. So we'll give it right around that one range. I think mid to, you know, closer to 200 range, only because of the fact that, you know, you got to buy the pumps and stuff, and then you also have to have media and whatnot. But we're just talking about the systems themselves. The 4-pot system from Autopot is going to cost you about $220, I believe, right around there, which you can use code Dusa forms at checkout and save a little bit more. Yes, I am affiliated, but at the same time, I have grown both systems, so it's really a preference. This is a preference-based question. This is my opinion, and this is what I'm giving. So they are going to be a little bit more costly, but then you're not running any electricity, only because the fact that the Autopots work via gravity, which the water flows from, so you don't have to worry about electric, due to the pump and whatnot. But again, when it comes to the pump, it's not like it costs a lot. You're not what a McDonald's meal each month that it costs in electricity, maybe even cheaper depending on where you live. I'm sure it's not all that much to grow using the pumps. I believe they're like 15 watts, 50 watts. I believe the one I have is 50 to 75 watts, which, that's going to run you a couple dollars. But if you got a fish tank, I think it would probably cost just as much as that or something. I'm not too sure. After cost and growth, what else needs to be said? You would think DWC is the answer, right? Well, in a perfect world, yes, maybe so. But when I think of this question, I'm thinking what's better for the overall grower, the average person, the person that's just going to be getting started in each of the two. If you were to take somebody and throw them into DWC for the first time and take somebody and throw them into using an Autopot for the first time, the results are going to vary different. They're going to crush in the Autopots, I promise you. If not, they're going to get damn near close. And then the DWC, they might not even make it through. There's going to be some things they've experienced that they never thought they would. When I first came across root rot, I didn't even know what the hell that was. Ran into all sorts of things with DWC, but I jumped straight into it from soil, and I was sucking in soil. But when I transitioned to DWC, I learned a great bit because I had to. It forced me to learn some things that I would have never thought of, and that really helped me. That's what I needed at the time for me to learn. But not everybody's going to be able to crush it in DWC. It's hard. It's easy to grow some great stuff in there, but it's also just as easy to fuck up. The overall maintenance and workload of the two is just, it's far different. Keeping the Autopots going is fairly simple. It's pretty much hands off. You fill up the res, and then you really don't need to come in there until it's time to refill up the res again. But in between, of course, you're doing things like defoliating, training, trimming, all sorts of things like that. But those are the only things you really have to focus on. Whereas DWC, initially, you're going to be checking the reservoir a bunch. You want to make sure that, things aren't fluctuating right. You're just going to obsess about it, which after a while, I learned to stop chasing the pH, the plant. As long as the plant was looking good, I knew everything was right. Of course, every couple of days, I would still check it. Mainly want to check, temperature and whatnot, then seeing EC, seeing how, well the plants are absorbing those nutrients. But with DWC, there's just far more to worry about because you need to check, because you need to make sure everything's right. Are my bubbles still going? Because, sometimes those air stones can get clogged and things can stop. And then you got things like root rot and all those other things, the system gunking up, maybe needs to be cleaned. And then also checking the water level in general, because you need to top that up. Whereas the Autopots, if you fill up that res, after the first run of it, okay, I got a good week, 2 weeks until I have to fill it up again, depending on your res size. And for cleaning the two, I would kind of say it was even, but I feel like in DWC you have to clean more often, whereas Autopots you could just clean in between runs, whereas DWC you may be cleaning a couple times within the same run, maybe bi-weekly or something like that. Maybe not a full clean, but somewhat of a clean, because you got to keep things sterile in there, DWC. And then for Autopots, as long as you're like cleaning in between runs, you should be pretty good. There's not going to be too much anything that goes, and then just making sure you give a nice little flush in the tubing every couple of weeks or something like that. Overall, pretty simple with the Autopots. Overall, DWC can be a headache for sure, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm just shitting on DWC, because I love it. I would definitely keep growing it, and I do in the winter months. And I highly suggest anybody out there to give it a try, because that shit's cool as hell just to see the growth. Like, you're going to see something you ain't never seen before, and then you may be bought into it from there, and then until you get hit in the mouth one time, and you're like, you know what, I don't like these type of problems. But yeah, I just still got to go Autopots, because when you look at all the physical things, the tasking and the headache that DWC brings compared to Autopot, that cost difference initially, it's worth it to pay the difference, especially on top of using my code, to cut back a little bit. And then also when you factor in the fact that you got to get additional, maybe a pump or something like that. So now the price is becoming a lot more equal. And then I'm sure at that point it's probably a $20, $30 difference in the two. And I'm sure for the convenience and the ease of use, you would definitely pay that for, using Autopots. Now I can easily go back and then I could try to move the goalposts and make DWC better, which initially you would have thought they would be better once I covered cost and growth, but I promise you everything after that, they're a lot more closer in cost than you would think. When I say Autopots are better, I'm not just talking about a little bit. I'm talking about way better. I'm saying like the average person is going to come into Autopots and absolutely crush it. I could put money on it versus what they would do in DWC. If you take one person, throw them in there for the first time with DWC, and then take them and throw them in Autopots for the first time, I promise you that Autopot, he's going to fall in love with it. He's going to look at the DWC and be like, nah, or he or she. But I promise you, they'll look at the Autopots and they'll choose that run versus their DWC run every time. That DWC run is probably going to keep them clear of that forever. They'll probably do good up until a certain point in veg, and then boom, probably root rot hits. There's a lot of things you got to worry about. Temperatures, aeration, all that. It's a headache. And if you've grown DWC, you know for sure. But at the same time, if you've grown DWC, you also know it's fucking great. So I'm not trying to shit on DWC by any means. I'm just saying that Autopots are better. But I don't know. These are my opinions. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you feel different. Let me know down below in the comment section. Until next time, peace.